Hello there. Welcome to Ascension Workers Live. I'm Mike Waskosky, and I'm glad to have you guys joining us. And I'm going to give a brief overview of what I'm intending to accomplish with this series. And also, I'm inviting more of the community now. You can join in and chat. Right now, this is a webinar. It's not a regular Zoom meeting, so you can chat in the chat box. And there is a potential, though, with the Zoom webinar for me to bring in people into the to be what's called a panelist in this meeting format, so you can join in the discussions. And that is something that I'm hoping to do gradually, based on how things are going. And also this series, I'm hoping to bring in a lot of interview subjects, a lot of people who could potentially share a lot about their service in the community. And that's kind of the aim I'm going in, is with the Ascension work, what is it that we're really achieving? What is it we're really trying to do with the actual work of Ascension? It's not just a process that happens automatically. As Corey Good keeps emphasizing, this is a process that requires us to actually make a change ourselves in order to help change the planet, help improve the planet to the point where the consciousness is ready for the great new cycle, the ending of this cycle, and an appropriate beginning of the next cycle, which Ra speaks of a lot in the Ra contact, as the harvest, as the process when the souls that are learning to choose between service to self and service to others step out of the sinkhole of indifference, and they make that choice to serve others or to serve the self in such a degree that they become open to the understandings of light, which are the pre-requirements for the fourth density consciousness, which Earth is spiraling into right now in the galactic stage. As the energies come into the planet, they basically affect our consciousness such that it forces us to take on more light and take on more conscious awareness, a more dense consciousness, which allows us to see what it is that we haven't been looking at in our lives, to see what it is that is holding us back. And then we have to make an analysis and a choice around these things that are holding us back from essentially collectively, individually and collectively evolving as a planet to a planet which is capable of, at the very least, having everyone live in harmony, because we have collectively chosen that kind of a reality for ourselves. I was thinking of starting out with that's pretty fun. I can slide back and forth. I was going to start out with a passage from the Raw Contact to kind of kickstart the energy for these meetings. And I don't really intend to have anyone to interview today. As the first meeting, I thought I would just share some of my philosophy and outlook for what I would like to do with this series. Can everyone hear me okay? Looks like everything's going okay. So I guess to get started, in session 17, question 30, Don Elkins asked, if an entity wants to learn ways of it, if it wants to be of service to others rather than service to self, while he is in third density, are there best ways of being of service to others, or is any way just as good as any other way? And Ra said, the best way to be of service to others has been explicitly covered in previous material. We'll iterate briefly. The best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. I'm going to break this down a little more after I read the whole thing. This involves, shall we say, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex, which is what they refer to as an individual, as a mind-body-spirit complex. Speaking to the intention of your question, the best way for each seeker in third density to be of service to others is unique to that mind-body-spirit complex. This means that the mind-body-spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. This will be different for each. There is no best, there is no generalization, nothing is known. And this is the kind of the point of third density consciousness. When we have a veil over our awareness, we don't really have everything put out in an easy way for us to understand and discern what it is we're trying to do, and what it is that the best choices we could make would be. Let's see if I can get rid of that there. Get rid of the little blip on my shirt. But the ultimate goal of third density is to have a lack of awareness that causes us to reach out and begin the seeking process. It's through the lack of knowing that we have a desire to know that which is unknown, and that's the process of seeking. And it's interesting that this starts out here with the best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek. And we could break this whole thing down word by word and get a different kind of lesson out of this whole sentence here. But you could start with the word constant. Are we able to do anything constantly? It takes so much discipline, and this is why I think the disciplines of the personality and discipline in general is such a strongly emphasized principle in the raw contact books. The willpower is connected to discipline. Strengthening the will can relate to being able to practice and be able to hold images in the mind. You have to be able to be disciplined about holding true to something that's going on in your mind rather than letting your mind wander constantly. And I think this might even be an interaction between the body and the mind, where the body has to be in a state of balance. The body has to be sort of capable of staying energized and alert and aware in order to be a useful vehicle for the mind and be the proper extension of the mind, which Edgar Cayce called the builder. The mind is the one who's doing the building, and then the body is like an extension of that building, as far as I can tell. And then the building can extend further out into creation. But the mind has to be kind of kept in check with a constant attempt to seek. And seeking, it takes on a negative connotation sometimes when people think that our goal is to kind of release ourselves from attachments. And seeking is usually related to being caught up in attachments and wanting to pursue something that we kind of can't get out of our system that we need to pursue. And Ra actually encourages that in another session as well, to pursue all things desired and distill the love and light that are found in those things. And if it's an infringement of the free will of others to pursue that desire, then you exercise imagination. The mind contains all things, and the mind is capable of seeing both sides of every kind of imbalance without us having to act externally. But to get to the point of forgiveness sometimes does require a little bit of extra emphasis from the physical universe, as we're given the catalyst necessary through our programming of our lifetimes that began before we were born. This programming is putting us on the pathway of having certain experiences in the physical illusion, which will trigger our mind to become aware of the things that we need to be forgiving of, people who reflect us, who are us, who show us the aspect of ourselves that we hadn't recognized yet. We are infinite in our nature, so it makes sense that we're in an infinite physical universe where we have infinite aspects of our nature to discover and put into our awareness, so that if there's any imbalance there, we can forgive, heal, and move on and move beyond to pursue the next aspect of our beingness, which is just a pathway back to infinity, from infinity to infinity, back to God, or the one infinite creator. So the best way of service is to the constant attempt to seek. But what are we seeking? We seek to share the love of the creator as it is known to the inner self. So we seek to share love. And it's interesting, Ra also talks about service to self-polarity. Negative entities have essentially a desire to seek to share their understanding of love, but it's a love of self. It's the idea that you shouldn't love anything but me, as the negative entity's perspective, and that's interpreted as narcissism, and psychopaths can have a lot of imbalanced ways of viewing things because they twist it all back to how great they are, and that's basically like a love of self. That's a teaching that they're trying to offer, and so Ross says there's great danger in building up of a personality of any kind because of the fact that you can a person who's trying to build up a personality that would seem to be a separate entity, you building up this nature of this mind body spirit complex identification process. You have to be careful to choose the way in which you're using it, and you're allowing these personality manifestations to surface, to constantly seek to use those for the purpose of service to self, or service to other self, based on your chosen polarity. Service to other self being the one that is most crucial for us at this time, service to others. So the best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator. And the love of the Creator is an abstract principle as well, because of the fact that what is the love of the Creator? Where is that coming from? Are we the Creator? Is the love of the Creator coming from our hearts? Do we see the love of the Creator in our hearts, or have we not found that yet within us? So finding the nature of the love of the Creator is a part of this process, and finding the nature of the love of the Creator as being this unconditional, infinite, loving consciousness, finding that within yourself will allow you to see the love of the Creator is just an aspect of yourself that you can tap into more and more in a more purified sense. And that's why I think they call this the best way. The best way is to become the Creator, to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. So wherever we're at in our process of recognizing, identifying that love, that's what they're talking about when they say, the mind, body, spirit complex must then seek within itself the intelligence of its own discernment as to the way it may best serve other selves. So if you know that love involves making food for other people or helping people who are in need, then your intellect is going to be playing a dance with your heart, so that you can continuously become more and more able to share the undiluted, pure, radiating love of the Creator as is known to inner self. And this involves self-knowledge, kind of what I'm talking about here. What am I actually capable of doing in service to others? And where are my blockages, and how much have I stumbled and gotten distracted? All the aspects of the disciplines of the personality: know yourself, accept yourself, become the Creator. All these aspects are rolled up in that self-knowledge as the starting point. Self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to other self without hesitation. And this is also kind of like clearing of blockages, because when you have a hesitation, it's like you're blocking the energy that is seeking to become manifest through your physical vehicle. And so the opening of self can be, and we can have fears that are of the mind complex too, that block us from opening without hesitation. And so the process of knowing the self and accepting the self seems to be also a process of becoming the Creator, because as we understand each blockage and we identify what we have to deal with to break through our blockages, then that actually starts to open up once you have the heart open, you're working with the green ray, and then you start opening the blue ray, which is the energy center of the chakra system of expressing yourself without any hesitation, without any fears, freely and fully powered by the heart in fully loving manner. And I guess it's a little bit ambiguous in the raw contact if negative entities are using the blue ray center. There's some quotes seem to discuss that differently, but the blue ray center is usually, I think, being misused by negative entities by the solar plexus energy center, energies becoming very strong as the energies of our kind of egoic personality that we understand as benefiting us in our operations in the society around us. As we build up that fuel system, then we can say, okay, I think it's to my advantage to use certain communication processes, and they may not be coming from the heart, but it could be that maybe the person who originally shared that style of communication was coming from the heart, and then they taught the negative entity, this is how you get further in the society, is that you express yourself in this loving manner, and then the person can use that to their advantage, and mimicking people who have gained favor in a particular communication style. And that's how I think the blue ray is used for negative purposes. But I think there's actually a strong sensation that you can feel when you're starting to open up your blue ray centers and sharing in that open-hearted and without hesitation manner. It's almost like every time you open up completely without hesitation, you're talking to one person, you're talking to God, and you don't have to judge the other person and what they're ready to hear. Although you may be considering what they're capable of hearing and focusing your communication around what they're capable of hearing, And I think that's why Jesus spoke in parables. He's recognizing that to share without hesitation, he had to share in the way that people were capable of receiving, with their belief systems not being too infringed upon, and giving them that free will to believe what they want to believe, while still teaching as much truth as he possibly could that would benefit them. So this involves, shall we say, radiating, and that's a word that's used specifically relating to the blue center, also in raw contact, radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. And so the essence or the heart, this is kind of distilling our identity back into one thing. And I think that this is also connected to the perceptions, what Ra refers to as the seeing in terms of the sacramental nature of each experience. As we build ourselves a little bit past the belief that the situations in our life don't have any value or purpose, we can start to enhance our awareness of how important every moment is, and see the sacramental nature of each experience, see how pure and divine and holy the opportunity of each moment is. And that begins to reveal what is the essence or heart, I think. What is the heart of what we are offering on the table right now in physical incarnation? What is the essence of this offering of service to others that we're allowing our incarnational vehicle to be used for at this time? So that was kind of a lot of words to cover a small number of words. Let me see if I can look at the chat here, see what people are saying. I was asking if I'll do this webinar every month at the same time. I'm actually open to doing more per month, and I'm thinking second Saturdays at around noon works well for people who are in Europe. So I'm thinking this is probably a good time to keep doing it. Todd says, I understand instant manifestation can occur if we are able to hold a thought on what is wanted for 45 minutes, as it will appear before you. Not easy thing to do. And yeah, I agree that if you have a completely pure focused intention, that's I think that's a process of integrating your consciousness with everything that is related to that thought. So I think sometimes the blockage. So for example, I think prayer and visualization can share a lot of common ground. And when people are praying, they very often see something is wrong in the universe. And I feel like the Course in Miracles channeler had a pamphlet called The Ladder of Prayer, where it was described that basically prayer is a concept that starts with feeling that there's something that needs to change to the level of consciousness of God, which is the awareness that all is perfect and all is divine and holy, and then it becomes a song. It becomes just a singing of a song from the creator to the creation in exchange. And that's the powerful level of manifestation. The way I see it is that once the highest level awareness is achieved, then it's like God manifests that which God desires instantaneously as that awareness is brought into reality through it being a process of exchange, of giving up that which was no longer needed in our awareness, in our karmic cycle, to take on the infinite intelligence. This is what Ra calls intelligent infinity also. It's taking on infinite intelligence as a way of instantly manifesting, instantly creating. They said we can walk the universe with unfettered tread, as though when we're in that state fully, it's like you can teleport your body. You can do anything that is not infringing on the free will of others, which is a part of the creator's plan, because the creator is choosing out of free will to have all these experiences simultaneously. Thank you guys for sharing. So yeah, I didn't really have a long talk planned, although I wanted to cover a couple of points that I think are kind of in this first session, where I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for a vision a journey that I want to go on with you guys. I want to discover what are the ways that we can be of service to others, and be more disciplined in becoming of service to others, in benefiting the transmutation of consciousness on Earth at this time to fourth density consciousness. How can we do this, and who can we learn from, and how can we work together, and what are all the things we need to be aware of? And I'm going to be learning through other people alongside of you guys. And I think that setting the context of what we're doing and why is why I want to have the stream today, discussing a few other items, such as what's really going on planet at this time, with people kind of going crazy. Here we have another chat from Ivan. Says, I had a much greater ability to focus, visualize before a negative entity started to make its way into my energy structure. Little by little, I have been able to remove this entity over many years. Now I am regaining the use of my faculties. I have not been able to astral project for some time now due to this. Any recommendations to regain control of my full faculties? Well, I will say that there are several things that can create a much greater level of spiritual balance. And one of the things that helped me a lot was meditating in a pyramid. And there are several ways to create a meditation pyramid out of wood or copper pipes. That's kind of a whole other discussion. But I feel like I felt like I became more aware of the ways in which I was being messed with by entities when I was meditating in pyramids. And it's almost like it's a barrier. And then it's almost like I felt like I could shake myself more free and kind of become myself again, more in meditating in pyramids. And also crystals have helped me. And it's a similar principle, honestly. I mean, you're focusing consciousness in some way. So if you're working with crystals, and it can be very difficult to know the right way to work with crystals, but I think that the goal here is to understand that you have the power to use your environment to boost your ability to sustain certain kinds of consciousness that you're seeking to sustain. So when you temporarily go into a state that's elevated, you can charge your crystal, and you can keep that near you, wear it on your body, and you can maintain a relationship with these aspects of what Ra calls frozen light. And I feel like the pyramid might be a combination of frozen light with more fluid light that's being funneled up into the center. So I think and this is, sometimes people would call this prana. And there's lots of different devices out that people use also for funneling prana. And food is obviously the number one way that we are taking on energies. And so making sure you're experimenting, if you haven't experimented with eating a lot of leafy greens, like super high raw food, a lot of vegetables and fruits kind of diet for a while, or fasting, and then doing a lot of vegetables can kind of like clean you up from the more dense aspects of your physical vehicle that have been attracted to certain, I guess, consciousness distortions. So we're carrying a lot in our bodies that we're not consciously aware of, and that's why fasting kind of is a process of letting our bodies kind of clean up those lower elements. Because when you're fasting, it's almost like your body says, I need to clear out some of this junk in here, figure out what food I can take back from the body. And so your body naturally has this process of just going into cleaning mode, and it just starts cleaning everything up if you don't eat if you don't eat food for a day. So fasting is another huge recommendation I give. I hope that answers the question somewhat. Todd asks, Todd says, via the cycle of density movement, I would imagine that we have done this many times before. So we have done this many times, that being moving from first density to source, then start again on another time and place or dimension, different type of existence. Are we now, given the time we have left before the solar event, moving into unity consciousness, given it does seem media events to view personal events, people can hide secrets? Okay, so first question you seem to be asking here is with the existence of previous universes, basically, or previous realities. And it's so fascinating to me that Ra does speak about the existence of a previous universe that led to an awareness of this universe. It doesn't seem like it's just happening the same way, though. It seems like there's like this universe is almost like exponentially more profound and complicated with how much we're capable of experiencing. Experience didn't even exist, apparently. The archetype of experience didn't even exist in the previous universe. They had the archetype of the mover and the moved and the significator. So there was some kind of significance to the moving and the movement. And those three aspects were also split across female and male, and mind, body, and spirit. And between these different dances, they were able to go through the entire, I assume, kind of 8 densities of evolution. The octave, they call it an octave, before this octave occurred. And then I think the second question, I think that's the kind of thing I'll get into later. It'd be good to talk about what's going on the planet a little bit. Carrie says, do you agree it would be safer to meditate in a cone-shaped as opposed to pyramid in order to avoid activating the King's Queen's chamber? Okay, so this is something Ra specifically discussed, is being more related to the angle that the pyramid is constructed with, rather than the fact that it's a pyramid. So cone shape, I don't know if there is any science done on cone shapes like there was done for pyramid shapes in the Russian pyramid experiments. But there are specific pyramid angles which are steeper, which don't have the effects that Ra discusses could be dangerous in the in Egyptian pyramid ratios. So I do actually have both kinds of pyramids. I have one inside of the other in my backyard, the Egyptian pyramid, and then a more steep pyramid inside of that. And I feel like they both do different things a little bit. And I haven't found much danger in the use of the Egyptian pyramid. But I feel that it is definitely a different energy, and it's more of a calming kind of energy, I think, in the steeper shapes. It's so hard to put it. It's so hard to explain to somebody who hasn't experienced it what this is that it's doing. And a lot of people sit in the pyramid, they have no experience. So but it is important to have one side facing north in order to have the stronger energies, or 20 degrees east of north for more sensitive people who think the 20 degrees or the straight north is too strong. Carl Ruckert, they said, to have her head facing 20 degrees east and north when she was doing the channeling sessions, because of the new earth energies coming from that, which I believe is, how the earth is going to tilt after the solar event happens. I don't know if I'm missing anything here. Todd asked, I find it interesting that it seems those we call elites who can presume our service to self to live in beautiful places attracted to it. Does that speak to who they are, or could they flip to service to others? I think they absolutely could flip to service to others. And being in better environments, this is actually specifically discussed. I'm going to get a water here. Well, in the raw contact, they said the more a being polarizes along either polarity, service to others, service to self, the more easy it is to flip polarities, because the more power and awareness the entity has gained. So you can use your power to shift your consciousness faster once you make a new free will choice to pursue a particular path. And it's easier in third density to flip polarities than in any other density, because of the veil allowing us to sort of reform. We're working with a small amount of consciousness, and it's easy to reshape it more quickly, I think. And the higher level of light you're working with, the more you can see the other puzzle pieces on the great stage. And so I'm certainly hoping that many people come to the light, and it could be a very dramatic and very exciting finish to the cycle when we see people coming out and sort of being the light in positions where they weren't previously. And we still have free will collectively, and hopefully, we can inspire people, and that's my goal, is to inspire people with this platform. They can honor the words of Ra. They can become as service to others as possible at this time, and not care about themselves as much. They can just use they can sell all that they have and give it to the poor in a manner which could relate to free energy technology. There's so many different things that could be done on this planet, with what we know about already being real, that was just being held back. Yeah, I'm excited to see some revolutions in consciousness happening that were not expected. So I could take a break from the questions right now and go into what is it that we're actually trying to do here on the planet, and why. And I think that we're in a situation where we have a lot of people who are zombies, who are sort of unaware that there is a spiritual path that they're on. And this is kind of, I don't know if this is just obvious, but this is kind of like what you get when you're watching TV. You get a lot of random noise, and there's not a lot of coherence that a person would say, yes, I remember now what I'm supposed to be doing. But people are using the television or using media to remember that, oh yeah, I have to go watch the next show now. I have to go consume the next product. I have to wait for that movie to come out. I have to go watch that movie. And there's all these different ways that we are distracting ourselves. And this is just in the West. And it's possible that I don't have enough experience with third world countries to see how much they're awakening. But I think that there are so many struggles. There's so much suffering because of the lack of resources being made available to the general public, because of the fact that everything is kind of structured in a way now around enslavement, and it doesn't even look like enslavement. And I feel like that's important enough that I should pull up the Law of One quote on enslavement. So I will switch back to my screen here. So Ross, Don Elkins asked, you say there are no cases where those who are service to others oriented are using in any way techniques of enslavement that have grown as a result of the evolution of our social structures. Is that what you mean? And this was misunderstanding. Ross said, it was our understanding that your query concerned the conditions before the veiling as previous one about the Orion group enslaving humanity. So before the veiling, there was no unconscious slavery, as you call this condition. So earlier in the history of the galaxy, there was no enslavement. When people didn't have the veil on their awareness, they saw each other as one, and there was no desire to, it'd be like trying to cut off a finger. It's like, why would I try to cut off a finger to use my finger differently? My finger's already being used properly in the manner in which I have placed it. At the present space-time, the condition of well-meant and unintentional slavery are so numerous that it beggars our ability to enumerate them. The condition of well-meant and unintentional slavery are so numerous, they can't even begin to talk about it. There's so much slavery that is both well-meant and unintentional. And I feel like this is kind of like a key to understanding what the traps we've gotten ourselves in on the planet today. Is like the systems that we're engaging in with financial transactions. It's as though every single way we're exchanging money, we're saying, I don't care about you, I care about your money. Because I mean, maybe if we were bartering, if like you go to the grocery store and the grocery store owner is right there, and you're like, well, I really need this right now. Can you give it to me for half price? I really need this. The grocery store owner is vastly more likely to say, okay, I see, I can open my heart a little bit toward your condition right now, and I can give you this. But we are in systems of hierarchical control where the person who's actually the cashier exchanging money with you is the one who's afraid that they have to keep their job So they have to make sure that they are, doing exactly what they're told, which is making sure to charge you full price. So it doesn't matter how much their hearts are open, or I haven't seen any cashier yet give something to someone in line. Uh, um, and there was one instance that just eats me up like crazy, where I did see someone turned away because their credit card didn't go through, and it's like, oh my gosh, it wouldn't have been that hard for me to exchange information with them and help them in that moment. And I realized it's like that was one of the most intense lessons I've ever experienced. Is that I this family I could have helped. I failed. Did I fail, or did they have catalyst they needed? This is actually a specific example in the law of one also, that a person is free to feel all the different catalysts when they see someone who is suffering. You can feel pity for them, you can feel compassion for them, you can feel like, what am I doing here? I should be somewhere else where there's less people like this. There's so many different reactions that we can have that are all catalyst. But where was I going with this? The slavery component of it is kind of our catalyst, and it's also our burden. And so the suffering on earth right now, I think, is ultimately purposeful in that it's calling us to open our hearts towards all the suffering, calling us all to recognize the ways in which we've been enslaved and say, I do not care about the system that's telling me to live my life a certain way. I would rather make new laws and new agreements with those around me and fight back against what could be perceived as tyranny, and that might be getting worse. And the fact that we're being slow cooked like the frog in the pot, we're being unaware of the ways in which we're giving over all of our freedoms, to the point where I don't know how this is going to look in the future. But I think the core concept that we need to keep coming back to is freedom. And I think understanding that freedom starts in the mind and it extends outward is also the core of how we actually become the light on the planet. Because if we see ourselves as enslaved, then we haven't yet figured out how to inspire others to see themselves as free. If we can see ourselves as free, then we have the energy necessary to begin to teach others the ways of living in a way that is free. And it's really just a shift in consciousness to recognize that at any given moment, we are working with the laws of the universe to respect the free will of others and to offer fruits and of service to others. And Ross says that the bearing of fruits is a protective activity. So as we become more of service to others, we become more protected. I feel like I have an incredible amount of protection right now around me to continue to do these missions, to help Corey Good whatever way I can, because I feel like he's got the true light, he's got the deepest, brightest light right now, and that's why there's a war of consciousness happening around some of his information. But it's directly connected to the same great light which I see in the raw contact. This is the way I've always seen it. And it's shocking to me also how few people are talking about the raw contact, talking about the principles of it in the wider UFO community. That's baffling to me, because I cannot find anything that even comes close to the level of intelligence and profoundness. But I feel like light in general is this. It's at the center of the war for consciousness, and so freeing people from enslavement, I think, is also a process of tuning into the light and finding the way to bring the highest level of light and love that we can into our experience, into our reality, and that can be simply teaching people about how to eat healthier, and that can be teaching people about opportunities to form food co-ops, or to collaborate in ways that free us more, make us more independent from structures and systems that we don't feel have our best interests in mind, that are just completely greedy systems. So that's kind of a big discussion also. I could switch back to see what people were saying in the chat now. This might be a little too much for me. Actually, there's a Q&A tab here. Yeah. There was just one Q&A. There's a separate chat tab from the Q&A. It might be helpful if you ask specific questions in the Q&A too, so I can browse through it faster. Um, I'll go back to some other subjects here. Um, so yeah, ultimately, I think the world is suffering so much right now on so many ways that we can we can feel like we have to withdraw from it, and we have to sort of shield ourselves from what looks a little bit unpleasant. And I think that there's pros and cons to creating boundaries from the suffering of others, and and there's a lot of wisdom that has to be applied. But I think that we have to be very vigilant not to be distracted from the fact that we are on a planet where there is great suffering. I think this is kind of the trap of a lot of spiritual and religious communities, is that they're just little bubbles to themselves, where people are trying to, just like a business, they're trying to create a nice life for themselves. I feel like that's what spirituality and religion are a lot of times, is how do I make my life more easy, more comfortable, and how do I go back to sleep? How do I get more sleep? And I think the key, and I'm that way too. It's like we're instinctively trying to be comfortable. This is just the genetic systems of our physical vehicle that we prefer comfort. And it's also interesting, when you exercise the body starts to enjoy it more, starts to enjoy exercise more. All the little aches and pains start to go away as your body becomes stronger, and you start to really appreciate the fact that you can do a little bit of exercise. It doesn't take much exercise to feel great exercising. And I think it's the same way with all manner of service to others, that when somebody's actually being benefited, there is kind of like an energetic feedback, which is not a service to others thing. This is something that I've seen, the argument I've seen like atheists make many times, is that people who are choosing to serve and love others, they're getting a chemical high out of it. And so therefore it's a selfish thing. And I think that is a huge distortion of the nature of what love is, and the nature of what our will is. And our will is not one to feed our physiological systems on the most fundamental level. Our will is to incarnate to start with. Why did we choose to be born to start with? What was the purpose for us even taking on a body? That's where everything starts. So we still have a will to stay alive through eating food, and that's kind of like a service to self thing that we keep coming back to. We continuously are becoming hungry, and we think, well, I'd rather not be hungry right now, and that helps us stay alive. And that's not like a spiritual path, but that's more of a precondition to being on Earth in a body. But from the realization that we have our basic needs met, once we have the red chakra in balance, that our basic needs are met, now we start thinking in terms of self-identity, the orange chakra, and then we start thinking in terms of social relations, the yellow chakra. And practically everything people are overly focused on right now is in some way a social structure game of planetary consciousness that's like this infinitely complex web of beliefs around what it means to be a person in society. But breaking through all those walls is the way to win the game. The way Ross says, winning the game is opening the heart and compassion and say, I lay down all my cards face up. I don't care what I've dealt myself in this incarnation. I'm just going to love everyone. And that's when the magic of manifestation comes in much more strongly. And that's how we start breaking free of all these negative systems that have been holding us back, because they're using us in manipulative ways that prevent us from realizing that all of our problems do go away when we start tuning more and more into this higher unconditional love frequency, and this higher awareness that can intuitively show us what we're needing. There's been many times where I've been writing code, and this is almost like something that every programmer goes through. As you're writing code, you encounter bugs that are not your bug. It becomes frustrating initially, and you think, well, it's not my job. I should go talk to the person whose responsibility it is. Or if it's open source, you can acknowledge the fact that there's volumes and volumes, books worth of code that you could pour through, or you can say, I'm going to ask my guides right now, where is the root of this problem, and then I can be guided to the code file where the problem is just immediately. It doesn't require hours of research and reading through code. If I can just tune in and figure out that's exactly what I need to do to be of service to others right now, is to fix this problem in this particular code file. And it's like that. It's like that way with everything in life, that we just can live in kind of surrender to the higher self, in a sense that has the highest and best path for us in mind. And as long as we're just kind of willing to listen and just go along with the curriculum that's laid out for us, because every moment offers a new lesson and opportunity for choosing to open the heart further, choosing to walk in light a little bit more. So sharing light with others, I think, comes in many different categories. Health subjects are a huge deal. And so I hope to have a lot more health teachings on Ascension Works TV soon. And I've been so benefited by nutritional supplements. I mean, I've talked about the herb Gotu-Kola and other places. I always try to keep that at my desk. And Gotu-Kola is the number one herb that I take the most and I recommend the most. And the reason for that is still mysterious to me because of the fact that Gotu-Kola is the herb that has, when I first started experimenting with herbs and supplements, I was taking large doses. I would take one new supplement in a large dose, see if it changed anything about my day. I'd at least do a little bit of experimenting on myself, try to understand. And I mean, you want to research to see what is a safe large dose. You don't want to overdo it, but with something that's, this is something people literally will eat on their salad in India. I mean, you can grow it. I'm intending to start growing it on my own and experimenting with, putting more nutrients into it. But the herb itself is just like a food. So there's just happens to be, I guess, alkaloids. There's different compounds in there that the plant is generating that have benefits in the brain that seem to balance the hemispheres of the brain in some way. But when I first experimented with it, I went to, it was a Sunday morning. I went to church and I was brought to tears for the first time since maybe I was a kid. I couldn't remember the last time I was brought to tears. I was brought to tears. So that I immediately knew there's something different about this day. And then when I got home, I was like, oh my gosh, I took that herb. So I started experimenting and I kept being brought to tears more and more by the kind of like the beauty of creation, the beauty of reality, and I realized this thing is healing my brain or something. So that's been happening ever since. But I know that whatever that sensation is that it's doing, it's connecting me into a kind of higher aspect of myself. And it's kind of like an integrative herb. It's like it's helping me integrate and heal a lot of different hard to describe things that relate to opening the intuition. I think opening and connecting the intuition with the rational mind, I think, is one of the most important things that we can focus on. If there even is a way to focus on it, because the focusing is the rational mind trying to focus, and the intuitive mind is letting go of focus to receive, and consciously recognizing that we need to be intuitive is kind of like a step that I had to gradually open in order to be an effective code writer, programmer, and so out of that now comes Ascension Works TV, which is like a crazy combination of a bunch of different things that I've learned over the years and put together in one platform. And maybe I could even talk about it a little bit. But my goal with Ascension Works TV is to ultimately be a platform where everyone can share content of all kinds, and I do want to eventually make it so that it can be more monetizable for people in more ways, so that it can kind of replace the needs of Facebook and YouTube and course selling websites. And at the same time, I want to have it be a platform where we're curating and structuring the content so that people can wake up the fastest with very high quality pure information with very low noise levels. It seems like a lot of what people are doing out there right now is not really founded upon anything except their guesses and assumptions, and I feel like people are just assuming things and speaking them with great confidence. It's hard for me to know what to believe. But when people have been doing the work and they get a lot of results from their healing practice, that's a very good sign. Getting a lot of results in their lives, that's a good sign, and it's worth sharing what people are doing to help them heal faster and help us heal the planet faster. All right. Trish is talking about alkalinity. Yeah, alkalinity is very important. That's why also another reason I recommend trying to eat a lot more leafy greens. That's the easiest way to get a lot of nutrition and alkalinity fast, I think, is eating large leafy green salads. And I like salad dressings that are, and it's funny, this is what was talked about in the Raw Food Alchemy series on Ascension Works TV. I think in the second show there, she was talking about using, I think it was like, you basically want something that's an oil, and you want something that is a little bit acidic to balance out the alkalinity a little bit from the leafy greens. So you can avoid sugars in your salad if you just mix together olive oil or tahini with something like mustard or a balsamic vinaigrette or something. You can have a satisfying salad that tastes great with a little bit of fat in there, and balance out the flavor a little bit of the harshness of the leafy greens. If you're eating a lot of, there can be so much alkalinity in leafy greens that it's harsh to eat. If you're eating a lot of kale, so sometimes it's good to and potentially in the future, if we start eating the leafy greens growing around us naturally more often, those can be very harsh too. So having a little bit of acidity in the salad dressing can help balance that flavor. Yes, I am recording this webinar. You will have access. This is something that will be kind of an ongoing series, and yeah, I might be inviting more people on. I'm still deciding the right way to get permission for people to be recorded, and then I can invite more people on to these more on the fly to be joining in the discussion with your face and your voice in future sessions. Todd says that, yeah, people have said that meat is important to get the fat needed for the brain. And I mean, I feel like everyone is probably different, and I've just experimented with being vegan for so long. I just haven't had problems, and I've been, like I said, I've been experimenting with supplements all the time too. So I don't know if the supplements are what have helped me stay balanced on a vegan diet, or other food choices. For example, there's been times when I felt like I needed to be eating more beans. I needed to be eating more tempeh, which is fermented soy. Tempeh helped me I usually put that on a salad too. That was an easy way to kind of get a lot of extra calories and protein. There have been times where I was low on money, and I just was like, I saw recommendations, people eat raw peanuts, and I started eating a lot more raw peanuts, and that seemed to help me out too. And there's a lot of fat and protein in peanuts, but peanuts obviously have a kind of like a mold or a fungus thing that people are, that was what causes the allergy. They can also affect other people who don't necessarily think they have allergies to peanuts. Still might not be ideal to eat a lot of peanuts. So, but there's also herbs out there like cat's claw it's not literally cat's claw. It's like a plant from South America, maybe like Peru. And that's an herb that apparently helps clear out the fungus from the body. So I take that every day. I've been intuitively feeling like taking that every day. I don't know if that helps balance out what was ever in the peanuts that shouldn't have been ideal for me. But peanuts are essentially like beans more so than nuts, and nuts obviously can be great too, and but can be a bit more pricey. So yeah, I could talk about food endlessly too. And specifically relating to fats, I guess, I do love tahini. Tahini is sesame seeds ground up. It's very, very flavorful kind of dressing that can go on all kinds of foods. And so I probably get a lot of fat from tahini and almonds, and I don't know. Terry asks, is there a good book on or source that would go into depth on the archetypes, or are you planning on going into depth on that subject? And yeah, I have not found anything that is like anything a step up from the raw contact. It feels like the raw contact covered the archetypes so well that to even paraphrase what Ra says usually is adding distortions that make it less clear than what Ra said. So I would hope to one day offer a superior teaching that can go more into depth on all the details. And that's kind of what we started doing in the second Sunday discussions. If you attend the Law of One discussions, the next one will be on the February the 12th. We'll talk about those more. Yeah, high vibe food is very important. It's so fascinating to me that if everyone was growing their own food, they would have higher vibration food kind of naturally because of the prana that's in the living food and the freshness of the nutrients that don't die. You know, as the food is refrigerated, as it's going through the process of being transported and brought in the grocery stores, it's losing nutrients throughout the whole time. And as it ages, it's just gradually breaking down, becoming less fresh and less nutritious. And so the fresh vegetables are definitely a way of getting closer to high vibration. So Ivan asked, did you see the recent webinar from Michael Salla, House Collier Linden? I have not seen that. And it would not surprise me if it was contradicting. I feel like, you know, the amount of contradiction existing in the UFO field is so vast. And it's like people are turning a blind eye, I feel, to how much it's happening everywhere. And, you know, Michael Salla has written books in the past that I'm sure have details that contradicted some of his newer work. And it's like, it's because there's so many different sources to cover. We have different beliefs, different ideas, and he's doing his best to try to cover what he feels like is doing a comprehensive job at covering what's out there. But I have found that it's difficult to trust hardly anyone because nearly no one is even reading the raw contact and seeing that their beliefs contradict what's in the raw contact already. So it's like I could not do what Michael Salla does. Is there, yeah. Carrie asked for a list of recommended supplements. I would say it kind of depends on your diet, of course, and my list of recommended supplements is kind of long, and it's been changing from year to year also. And if I could think about it right now, like the number one supplement I think everyone is deficient in is iodine, and I like the work of Dr. Brownstein, who has a book called Salt Your Way to Health, also, and a book about iodine. I think he calls it the most misunderstood nutrient. And you know, if you look at the Edgar Cayce readings, they're full of recommendations that people take iodine in a form that's called Lugol solution, Lugol. And if you search for Lugol solution, you'll get supplements for iodine, which actually have a high dose of iodine, very, very high dose compared to practically, you know, if you take a multivitamin that has iodine in it, it'll say 100%. You won't find a multivitamin that has iodine in it that it'll say like 10,000%. You won't see that because of the fact that you know, multivitamin makers are not really that aware of this kind of research that shows that people are so deficient. Because doctors are not testing for iodine deficiency levels. They just used goiters to say we need a little bit more iodine in the salt. They used to put iodine in the bread. They stopped doing that. Iodine is in the salt, but people aren't even taking iodized salt hardly anymore. And, you know, just enough iodine to prevent goiters is not the amount of iodine which will actually supercharge your thyroid and make you resistant to the harshness of the sun, which is literally what happens when you take enough iodine. You no longer have to worry about sunburns or sunscreen. That's my experience, at least. I still get a little bit of coloring on my hand, but there's no stinging. There's no. It doesn't feel like I'm being damaged. It just feels like I'm being lightly cooked a little without any kind of negative side effects from staying out in the sun. And I've experimented. I've been doing this 15 years taking very high dose of iodine, which would be 12.5 milligrams per day. It's what I recommend if you can do it every day. And if you're very deficient, if you have any thyroid issues, I'm not going to give you any medical advice. Never mind. I got to put in a different disclaimer for that kind of thing. I'm so far from being a doctor, honestly. But I recommend also people take selenium as a separate supplement. I feel like that's another one that's generally deficient. People are generally deficient in that, and there's so much that's been associated with the benefits of selenium for the body and the brain. I take it in the form of selenomethionine, 400 milligrams a day. And B vitamins, obviously, I have a strange relationship with B vitamins because I feel that there are potential times that I've taken too many B vitamins. So I take 50 milligrams of a lot of the B vitamins in a B50 supplement when I'm trying to get a lot of work done. And when I'm only focused on spiritual work, I do not feel like I need B vitamins. I feel like my brain kind of is in a different kind of balance when I'm not taking B vitamins, and I prefer not getting too many vitamins sometimes, and just kind of like fasting from vitamins. But yeah, it really depends on what you're deficient in. So there probably all are good multivitamins out there, and there are a lot of really good herbs out there. Obviously, something like astragalus is just all around very beneficial for the body. So I take astragalus extract every day, and cat's claw extract I take every day. I mentioned cat's claw earlier, and I started taking rhodiola now that I've had a baby and my life has gotten more stressful. Rhodiola rosea extract, and there's a phospholipid called phosphatidyl serine, which is found in soy lecithin and sunflower lecithin, and that seems to boost the brain quite a lot, and it's very, very well scientifically studied. Sometimes it just goes by PS, phosphatidyl serine, and I love that one. It's one called PQQ I just started taking that seems to be doing something else for my brain that's hard to put words on, but it seems to keep me in a better state of mind and more balanced and more productive. Yeah, this is something that probably did its own presentation. And curcumin, the extract of turmeric, is extremely beneficial for so many things in the body. It's like I would recommend people always have a bottle of turmeric around, so that if they feel intuitively guided to take more turmeric, you can get your body a little bit flowing its juices a little bit cleaner for turmeric, I think. D3, if it's the winter time, you're not getting out in the sun, you got to be taking a lot of D3 just to keep your immune system functioning properly. D3 can kind of make up for those deficits in sunlight. Yeah. Todd says my wife makes me take D3, and I take 10,000 units of D3. It's like being out in the sun for 10 minutes is like 10 to 20,000 or something like that. So these supplements that have like less than 1,000 units of D3, it's almost like, what's the point of that if it's not even like being out in the sun for a few minutes? I'm sure there's others, but like I said, maybe I can do a completely separate show and maybe talk about somebody who's an expert in these things more, and bounce ideas off of them with what they think is most important. Yep. Todd talks about red salt, and Dr. Brownstein talks about the importance of unrefined salt that has the minerals left in there. I think you might mean the pink salt, Todd. The pink salt has more minerals. Himalayan pink salt is one of the most common varieties of salt that has more minerals added in. And I take one. I like one called Real Salt, which comes from Utah. Celtic salt is great. Celtic salt, I think, has a slight amount more sulfur in its makeup than the other kinds of salt, which I found interesting because of the connection between Celtic people having apparently more psychic ability, and there may be some kind of connection between that and sulfur. I don't know for sure if we're low on sulfur in our diets or something like that. But there are I should have mentioned this, is that all the foods they were eating, organic or not, if you're not growing it yourself, there's probably, and you're not specifically making sure it's getting a lot of minerals in the soil, all the soil is being depleted through conventional and organic farming methods. Very often, the soil has so much fewer minerals. So eating the salt that has more minerals in it is a great start, but I think it's also important to take an additional kind of supplement that would contain what's called the humic or fulvic minerals, which are basically like after forests or vegetation decomposes, it turns into the black soil, and when people do chemical processes on the black soil to distill it down to kind of like this pure form of mineral content, that mineral content then is put into many different kinds of supplements these days, and it's called humic or fulvic minerals. And there's an ancient version of it called Shilajit, Shilajit, and that one might be just as easy to afford as any of the other supplements, and contain a lot of the same, practically all the same nutrients that you'd get from any other of the fancy, expensive fulvic or humic minerals. But I'm not speaking from a strong experience in what supplements are out there. But I know that mineral supplements are very important, I think, for rebuilding the body and keeping everything running properly, as it would have if we had been alive 100 years ago when we were getting the nutrients from the soil that was more close to what nature intended. Kelp is a really great way to get iodine, definitely. Yeah. If you're eating kelp every day, if you're eating like the Japanese eat seaweed, then you probably are getting enough iodine. So that's like the only way to get enough iodine, which is very profound to think that the iodine is not in the soil. The iodine went out to the oceans. I wonder if there's some kind of process that caused the iodine to be pulled out of the rest of the earth and just end up in the oceans, or if it was just, I don't know, some other fluke of our evolutionary process that the iodine was not in the right amounts in the soil, and you got to go to the ocean to get enough iodine if you're eating like a normal diet, without supplements. Yep. Todd mentioning fasting. Yep. Fasting is awesome. I don't know how everyone's body reacts to fasting. Honestly, I know my wife had problems where she was puking bile, I think, when she started fasting. One particular time she started fasting, she was puking up more of this bile, and I know there's a lot of recommendations on the internet relating to that, that she had to look into. So you have to kind of experiment and know your body, and think the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the more your body adapts to the changes, and also detoxifies through the process. And detoxing is a whole other subject, which I'm not an expert in at all. I could share a funny story that there are powders called zeolites that can help detoxify the body from heavy minerals, heavy metals, have different aspects that apparently you want to get out of your body. But I one time took too much, and I didn't drink enough water, and I ended up getting dehydrated and getting a severe pain in my lower abdomen, and that was not pleasant. And it was like I was so stressed that I wasn't drinking water already, with other work that was going on in my life, and it's like if supplements are kind of like a component of your anxiety, if you're taking your supplements out of fear that you have to be taking them, and you take too much, that can be kind of like an extension of your karma a little bit too. In the same way, a supplement can be seen as something that is furthering health. It can be seen as something that is associated with a fear, and so it's good to and that's I felt like I needed to be taking more zeolite, and I ended up getting a negative side effect from that. So the I guess I'm just saying to stay in tune to your body when you're taking supplements. Well, I guess we're 75 minutes in now. I think there are other areas of information that I'd like to cover on these live streams eventually, such as relating to the practical skills that we are needing to learn if we're going to have to revert to a lower tech society at some point. It might actually be, I mean, people get so much joy. It's like everyone has a hobby, there's a lot of people who teach different aspects of survival skills, and they get great pleasure from it, and they get great pleasure from teaching others about how to live in a very efficient way. There's so many more tools now that are low tech but are still superior to what people had hundreds of thousands of years ago, just because of all the advancements in material science and manufacturing that we've had. It's very easy to buy a lot of tools that will help you be a better farmer today, and also maintain everything in your life. So I'm hoping to get into more practical areas, but the most practical thing that we can focus on is ultimately our spiritual path, and what it is that we're not yet breaking through, that will bring us to the next lesson, which is the most perfect lesson for us, which will break through our walls of inability to be of service to others. And then at that point, I think once we are focused on being of service to others, we can step into our community on a different level. And so one thing I want to recommend for people, if you've never even checked the website volunteermatch.com, that's a great resource. I'm going to pull this up here. For getting aware of what else is going on in your community, so that you can begin to become a part of. Let me see if I've got the right screen shared here. So the website volunteermatch.org, you can just type in your address, click find opportunities, and it pulls up a list of all the nonprofits in your area who have registered for this website and said that they need help with something that they can just receive applicants for getting help through. And so, nonprofits don't always cover the greatest needs in your community, and it's always important to kind of recognize when you can be of service to others without any kind of formal organizational system. But the fact that there are organizations with very loving people already in them, certainly the larger organizations are more suspect than the smaller organizations, but very often smaller organizations evolved out of people being very open-hearted. And it's important to go meet those people in your community and kind of get a sense of, is there something that I could be doing that is going to allow me to feel a lot of connection to my community and satisfaction that I'm actually making a difference. I'm actually helping people. This is at least one little tiny way to get started, that I could recommend people at least try if you've never looked on here, browse through, and just step out of your comfort zone a little bit more with trying to find ways to volunteer if you have the time, which a lot of people don't because of the slave system that we're in. And I understand that. And it's like, I felt like I had to kind of back away at one point from dedicating my whole weekends to things that were not maintaining myself. Before I quit my job, but eventually I had to step away from my working full-time job and just do freelance work, which would allow me time to have like a balance between 50% paid work, 50% free community service in some form. And that's how I was able to, build so many services for the community in the past and do so many meetup groups, is because I just said, this is my job too. Part of my job is not being paid, and it's just doing what I feel is important. And so I feel like that's been a good balance for me to try to maintain some sense that I'm balancing my efforts between employment and community work. But at some point, they started to blend together, and I realized, I can just pursue communities like Ascension Works TV, and I can pursue projects that will be of service in a way that I feel is actually being most of service for what I can offer at this time. Not that I cannot be of great service when I encounter homeless people on the street, like a homeless person, homeless family, anything. I can be of service in exactly the right way, exactly the right moment. That's always happening, and it's like it's important to stay open to your wider community without feeling like you know your calling, because your calling could change from moment to moment based on the lesson that you didn't know you needed to learn that is being opened up to you. So like in Colorado Springs, they had a food bank that I checked out. It's like there's so many homeless shelters and ways to help pets, also ways to help families, ways to help with education, schools, and all kinds of children's services, hospice, mental health. I don't know if any of these are just advertisements for money. I hope not. But yeah, you can sort by, certainly if you're in a larger city, you can sort by causes that interest you, and skills that you have. So that's a fascinating resource. I think probably a lot of people don't know about that. But the number one resource that I want to recommend to people, as I have in the past, if you're not aware of it, is meetup.com. If you're not a registered member of meetup.com and receiving emails, I recommend getting on meetup.com and telling it what you're interested in. It basically will ask you your interests, and you can put in, there's many different kinds of categories and tags people tag their events with. So as a meetup organizer, I can tag my events with Law of One if I want to. I can tag them with CE5 meditation. And as people who are interested in those things go on the site and search for those things, then they will be able to find my meetings and my groups. Although mostly the way people find it is through the bigger, broader categories like spirituality, consciousness, meditation. You can see how many people are subscribed to the different categories when you're selecting the categories. So that's a way to kind of funnel more people locally in your group. So if somebody is registered interest in consciousness and you start a new group and you say, my group is about consciousness, this is like a way to put in like 8 tags or something like that, then they will get an email and they will know right away that you are in their area and you will want to talk about these things in a meeting. So that's why meetup.com is so powerful as a tool for marketing. And, Facebook does this to a much, much lesser degree. When you start a Facebook group that's focused on a particular region and people are searching for that region, they might be recommended that group, but Facebook algorithms can, they can take a whole lot away from even just the members who have joined the group, because they won't get the notifications if they didn't specifically try. And hopefully Ascension Works TV can kind of be a replacement for meetup.com more too, so that our community will at least be able to find the people in the community who are local. That's a huge goal, to kind of merge the features I built with this previous social network I did called the New Earth Network. I'm going to pull all that into the Ascension Works TV community eventually. But meetup.com has by far the most people, and of any similar website for finding people with, I guess, eclectic interests or any interests that are outside of the norm. You'll find those. If you don't find any groups on meetup.com that come close to what you want, then you could just start one and even just have it be like a Zoom meeting that is, once a month or something, and at least see if anybody wants to join that's local to you. And then you could even start, not that I recommend starting with necessarily a Zoom meeting if you know that people are local to you and they're interested in joining, because I certainly didn't. It wasn't even a feature on there to do Zoom meetings to start with. I started to do the ET Disclosure and Contact meetup group in 2015, and immediately there were like 10 people who came to the first meeting. And it turned out somebody else had been doing a similar meeting and stopped doing it a few months prior in town, who wasn't organized through meetup.com. So it was very easy for me in Colorado Springs, which is a fairly large town, hundreds of thousands of people. So, if you're in a town with 5,000 people, it might be much harder to find anyone that's similar to you. But once you're able to meet with people local to you that are similar to you, then it's almost like it's a avalanche effect. For me, it was an avalanche effect of becoming more involved in all different kinds of communities in the area that are loosely connected to each other. And it's like there's already a network of light workers who are building communities, and those communities can start to integrate more. And I think that I feel like I've kind of had a vision that as we get closer to dramatic events happening on Earth, and maybe society collapsing to a little more intense degree than it has been, then having your peers who understand what's going on, who are capable of understanding what's going on, I think that's going to be one way that we can be a much greater service to our local communities by setting up the systems that are built by people who are actually capable of maintaining some level of agreement of mind around what actually is service and what needs to happen to predict what is most needed and maintain that level of service to our communities. But yeah, that's what led to me doing protests at the Space Force. It was Air Force Base at the time. Now it's called Space Force Base, and giving them a bunch of information. And Corey Good has talked about that a little bit. And also the Space Symposium here in town, the largest space conference. Colorado Springs is an interesting town, to say the least. But every town is different, and I'm sure there's different ways to wake up people who are stuck in different belief systems. But starting to have a community of people who are awake is really key. Trish says she's alone in a town with a black sheep in a town full of 7,000 white sheep. Yeah, so I know that's the way it feels a lot, and this is why I think it's a good idea just to have a meetup group anyway, and just see if there's anybody, because inevitably there'll be somebody else who looks. Yeah, you never know. And I think also there's something going on right now with the the awakening in consciousness. People are tired, and you can start out with just something of, I'm sick and tired of X, and just have that be your meeting title. I'm sick and tired of X, and if that's something that a lot of other people in your community are sick and tired of, or in your city are sick and tired of, which is clearly happening as we're divided 50-50 right now, in this polarized consciousness. I think there's a lot of people who can kind of like begin to wake up to broader concepts, or they might be like on the fence about a lot of things. You just need to show them a little bit more evidence, and they can wake up a little bit faster. So, like my dad, for example, he could have been called a traditional Christian conservative at one point, but he was super skeptical of all the media. It's like, how much influence from other governments is there on the media? He wasn't even suspicious of the United States government as much as foreign governments. But then when I showed him the 9/11 Mysteries documentary, and he just realized how much of a absurdity it is to put some of those facts together that we were force-fed on 9/11, that he started realizing that he needed to do more research, as did I, around the same time. And it's like, it's just a little bit of a switch in the mind to say, okay, I'm willing to research. I'm willing to look and dig a little deeper. And if a person is at that point where there's just a little tiny switch that has to be flipped, then it might be your job to plant that seed and give them the opportunity to flip that little switch to start seeking a little bit more than they had before. All right, we are now at 90 minutes. I feel like that might be a pretty good length of meeting. Let's see, did I miss any questions here? I'm glad I wasn't overwhelmed with too many questions, I guess. Ivan says, building community is so important. I've put some effort into that over the years. Several times the folks I thought were light workers weren't exactly of the light. So I'm working with more wisdom now. And yeah, I feel like it's always a learning process, especially dealing with people of different age groups. People have different kinds of experience and different expectations. Some people may have experience with nonprofit structures. Some people have no experience with organizing at any level. And there's just dramatically different kinds of side effects from the different kinds of personalities out there. So I actually did a presentation on this. I did a couple of presentations on working with others in your community. So I have a slideshow here. I was wondering if I should share, which was from 2018. This was never recorded, but I had this presentation prepared for the Dimensions of Disclosure conference workshop that I did there. Make sure I've got right screen shared. So I put some slides in here that were about these challenges. People break out of their shells when they're around like-minded communities. So there's exponential power in numbers, so that's why it's important to at least start. It's important to have good places to meet. It's important to, sometimes it's good to avoid starting meeting in your home because people can be weirded out by going to a stranger's home. There might be a category of people who are kind of more comfortable at a library if you have a local library. So I've been doing meetings at libraries primarily for years and years. Parks are great, obviously. Always ask for feedback. Ask people about what they like about the venue, about the times and days of meeting, frequency of meeting format and length, ease of parking. It seems like small details, but they can make a difference to making people feel comfortable, coming back again and again to meet with you. And I like the idea of not doing, not ever presenting something completely and having that be the meeting. Like when you're with people in person, make sure you're doing a lot of open discussion and you're not controlling the discussion completely, that people are free to talk. And that's what really seems to attract people to the meetup groups I've hosted, is just letting people talk and letting people exchange ideas and information, because I don't have all the information and I could be boring, I'm sure, at some points. So it's very, very helpful. People can talk themselves and make it much more lively. And I do feel like there's a collective consciousness that starts to sit in when you don't have a plan, then the plan is allowed to be bigger than your planning. It's like your higher selves are working together on some level. Come with questions to ask. You could ask people what draws you to the group, what interests you about this particular subject, what are your experiences. Don't stress about what you're going to do in your meetings. Just let it unfold naturally. See if there are some people. It's important to start with a light approach to community organizing, where you're not very committed to trying to achieve something. Don't have too much of an agenda to start with, but just see who you can work with, and the people who are willing to work with you more, who seem most balanced and most aligned and humble. You can start to form a core group around them and have separate meetings where you're meeting with those people just as friends, and just make sure that you're able to get on the same page about more things than you may be able to get on the same page about in the other meetings where there's the general public being invited. money can be an issue. I would say, I mean, don't charge for money as much as possible when having public discussion meetings. You just invite a lot more people in if you don't charge for money. But letting people donate is still a good idea. That'll encourage the meeting to continue, I guess, on some level. So people have a lot of sacred cows. It's important to recognize when people have like a belief system that you can't touch because they're so bought into it that it's just like a red line of tape they put around their thinking, and you don't have to go there. You can kind of like walk around that line up until the point that the boundaries of the line are made so clear that you're able to more directly address those issues. It's like people have to understand each other and feel comfortable to dig into the deeper, I guess, biases that are religious in nature. Usually, it's almost like a religion. When even if it's political, it's more like a religion than a lot of other things that are just like, oh, I heard about this. Did you hear about that? Yeah, but I believe this, so I know that's not true. You know, there's these very different kinds of knowledge and ideas that are communicated. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to detect when people have individual agendas when they come to promote something. You don't know what they're trying to do. So just be patient, because it'll come out within a couple of meetings. You'll know what their agenda is. It usually comes out somehow. So understanding people won't get along is very important. Just recognize it's just gonna happen, but still finding a way to accept others as equals is key. It's just your energy of being accepting of others is what becomes like the model for others to emulate. So the more people like your energy that's open and accepting, the more they'll try to be open and accepting in the groups. And it's almost like people look up to the people who are most open and accepting in the groups. And sharing respect for everyone is definitely something you could make as a rule, a guideline for attendance. But it's also like a contagious factor that people want to see respect more and more when they attend the meetings. And when people are oblivious to the fact, then a lot of times those are just they don't return to the meetings. If people don't vibe well, they sort of end up leaving after a few meetings. That's my experience, at least. Yeah, not getting emotional is one of the key things to hosting meetings with a lot of different diverse belief systems and opinions. Just make sure that you've processed whatever it is that triggered you in the previous meetings, and meditate on it and come to terms of acceptance, and then you won't have to be emotional in the future meetings when that comes up. Recognizing everybody's a mirror is also another way of staying very balanced. When somebody triggers you, see, is there something about me that I'm not accepting of, that I can find? It's still everything is still a catalyst, as long as if there's any response inside of you. Ross says in session 42, even if it is simply observed, you're just simply observing a response in you, then that is still a catalyst useful for teach learning. The end result is that catalyst is no longer needed. Thus, this density is no longer needed. Yeah, staying relatively detached, but trying to work together as much as possible is the right philosophy, I think. Avoiding the words should and shouldn't can help people get along more easily too. When you're realizing that you're kind of the word should, if you're implying that someone needs to do something through a should, then it's like you're saying that their free will is not their own anymore. And you have to respect free will first. Let people do whatever they want, as long as it's not infringing on the free will of others. Which is obviously a wisdom game too, to understand what that means. But if you recognize the shoulds coming on, then that's one way to step away and to see if that creates more harmony. You can wait to be asked a question before speaking too. If somebody's getting really upset with you, just wait to see if they ask something, and you don't add anything into the conversation until they've invited that. Wait for the invitation to add more your energy. And again, if something becomes too harsh for them to want to be there anymore. And negative perceptions are temporary, and balancing the negative perception with positive perception is often just a matter of time. And I might end it with this. I so love this essay written by Silicon Valley investor named Paul Graham, who was observing debates on internet forums and watching people just not get along and not agree. And so he wrote an article, and I put it up on a website, howtodisagree.org, just because it's easier to read there or to find it. But the hierarchy starts with name calling. This is the easiest way to disagree with someone, is just say, you're an idiot, and I just don't care about you anymore. And then the second ladder of disagreement is ad hominem, attacks on the person's character or the authority of the writer, the authority of the person, without addressing the substance of the argument. It doesn't matter what you say. I know you are not trustworthy, so I don't care anything you have to say. So that's the next level up of it's slightly more respectful than name calling, I guess. But the next level up is responding to tone, criticizing the tone. Say, I don't like the energy in here. I don't like the way you're saying it. So I know that I don't care about what you have to say because I just don't like the energy. So at least you're not saying I don't like the person. You're saying I don't like the energy. And then contradiction is the next level up, when you're saying, I know you believe that, but I believe the opposite. I just believe the opposite. I'm sorry. That's not very helpful still, because it's not explaining the path. You have to build the bridge from their reasoning to your reasoning if you want to disagree well. And the counter argument is the starting point of this. Counter argument contradicts and then backs it up with reasoning and or supporting evidence. Refutation finds the mistake and explains why it's mistaken using quotes. So this is something that is more useful for, obviously, on the internet, when you're saying that somebody is completely off base because I know the truth is this and that. Well, you don't necessarily want to paraphrase this and that if you can quote this and that. So if you can put in a little quotation or a link, that turns a counter argument into a refutation when you provide something that they can directly see is the refutation. And then the top level is refuting the central point. So instead of getting lost in the details of what they're talking about and getting distracted by the less meaningful, important parts of what they're saying, find out, distill the core of what they're trying to say and explicitly refute that with some kind of evidence. That's the best kind of disagreement, that people can respect that. That's what science should be, is explicitly refuting through finding evidence and saying this is the point of this concept, and we have refuted this through this other scientific study and analysis. And science today is obviously devolving all the way back down to ad hominem and name calling sometimes. So it's interesting that this is emulated across all these different areas of our reality, that we have to keep in mind when we're engaging with others, that there's always a way to respond in a way that they might respect. All right. I think that would be a good show. Did anyone else ask anything here? Can we get a copy of this PowerPoint, Mike? Yes, I could post this in the show notes on the description once I post the description. And this is also like a historical record for me too, because I originally wanted this PowerPoint to be accessed through a recording, and was never recorded in 2018. Never had a chance to re-record it. So, and now it's kind of a lot of stuff's a little out of date there. But I don't know if I would agree with some of the things that I said back then. But it's still helpful to see what my thinking was, I think. All right. Yeah, I was nervous. I didn't have anything to talk about, but it looks like it went well. So I'm hoping to not be the only one talking on the next show, and I'm still debating. Do you guys prefer? Maybe I could ask in the chat right here, how many people prefer Friday nights, and how many people prefer Saturday afternoons, Saturday around noon? I should say this is Mountain Time I'm talking about. Saturday nights Mountain Time is like not accessible in Europe. So I guess I want to know who's in Europe, who's attending right now. Any opinions on, you guys like Saturdays? Yeah, I think Saturdays are good for me. And I'm also debating how many times I should do meetings like this. I'm thinking twice a month might be appropriate. And I'm thinking maybe on an upcoming Friday night too. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And I love you guys. I love that I get to interact with people in this way. This is the new thing for me to have a show where it's not all everybody's faces. And I'm glad it kind of worked out. But I do want to do more meetings where I do see your face, and those will keep being posted on the EssentialWorks TV schedule page, essentialworks.tv/schedule. And yeah, thank you guys. Take care.